You know how like your phone sometimes shares pictures of you like from years ago, like, oh, this day 8 years ago. I got one of those today, and I had a beard at that time. Like I still have a beard now, and I was like, did I shave like my beard off? Like if I had a beard for 8 years, like is this like now an ingrained part of my identity? When was the last time you shaved? I can't even remember.
Pandemic.
Yeah?
I went full, just to mess around. My wife did not enjoy it, so I have a beard
Did
again.
she recognize you? She has the final say.
Greetings and fist bumps. This is The Raised Eyebrow, a podcast where we discuss how humans being human can feel not so human sometimes. Because someone's got to do it, and we're your hosts, Kojo, Alex, and Mike. In this episode, we talk comedy and philosophy. More specifically, are comedians the philosophers of our time? What's the role of the comedian in society, and has comedic observation replaced classical philosophy as a truth-telling communication tool? Oh, and what about cancel culture? So, let's talk funny. Coming from three guys who talk funny. Hey, fellas.
How's it going? Yeah,
It's
I think
good.
it's probably best to get this out of the way. Like a lot of our inspiration in terms of what we talk about amongst ourselves is actually about stand-up comedy, and a lot of kind of coming from that lens of stand-up comedy and kind of the way that how it takes a part of society and kind of looks at it in a different way and effectively raises your eyebrow. So a lot of our inspiration does come from that realm of society and art.
Absolutely.
I've always appreciated like just the art of just one person on stage with nothing but a microphone, and just the ability to command a room of all those people, and just like that laughter. And when you see a great stand-up comedian, it's amazing what they can do, because there's no magic, there's no veil that they're hiding behind. It's just them on stage. Yeah. With nothing but like a stool and a bottle of water.
It takes a lot of courage to stand in front of people and like just command a room. And like I remember the first time I stood in front of people and I froze. Like I was supposed to sing, and I remember the time I froze to the point where I couldn't even remember the simplest song. Like
Stage fright is real.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a skill. So
really
I tried 5 minutes of stand-up comedy a few years back. I took a course and everything, and like it's terrifying, especially I think if you're not experienced. Like it takes, I would say, a lot of bravery to try to tell jokes, But I think let's explore the idea of our comedians modern day philosophers. So I think the nature of being a comedian is to live everyday life in philosophical thought. I think simply because you're looking for insights into what's funny. So it's part of the job qualifications to be a philosopher. But if you're a good comedian, you're a good philosopher as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then also, you guys know Norm Macdonald, rest in peace. Yeah. He did the Nothing special during the pandemic, and he very humbly says, it always makes me feel weird when people say comedians are the modern day philosophers, especially when there are actual modern day philosophers.
But they're not funny, so
Yeah, but that shows the humility of it.
I mean, can you imagine a philosopher hearing this and just sitting down? He took like PhDs, doctorates, and there's this comedian with no like high school diploma.
Yeah. Well, also like classical philosophy or academic philosophy, like it's dead. Like I don't know if it's not relevant or relatable to the everyman, to the everyday person, right? So like learning what Plato said, I mean, I could Google this. Do I need a PhD for this? Maybe I'm ignorant. No disrespect to our philosophical, to our philosophy majors.
Yeah, I mean, just like, I guess just for the sake of, not to argue against you, but just to argue to
Devil's
give
advocate.
give the other side of the story. It's like a lot of philosophy is akin to its time, and as a society progresses, you need thinkers to kind of articulate what's happening in that society and what it means for it and what the impacts for it are. Not to go down this particular rabbit hole, we will do an episode on it later. But if you think of AI and what it's artificial intelligence and what it's doing to our society, the good and the bad, is that how that gets articulated in society and what its implications are. That's essentially the role of what a philosopher would do and has always done. Just to kind of understand how do people actually operate and think in the society and kind of articulate that and then kind of apply schools of thought to it. That's the role. But then in terms of like the way I see like what a comedian does to that is they kind of come at it from a very particular train of thought, which is to be funny, to hold the mirror up, to make you laugh. You know, there's truth in humor. What makes you laugh at something that you find funny, it's, you know, it's usually because it's something that you can relate with, right? Like it's hard to find something funny about a culture that you have no connection to. But it's easy to find something funny in a culture that you have a really close connection to.
For sure.
Yeah. I also see like the modern day comedian is so laid back. It's like he's such a simple guy compared to like, you know, the philosopher who has like a higher level of education. And in a way, like the comedian to me is pretty much like how, like, you know, Native Americans have the coyote, who's like the trickster. And then the Ashanti people have the Anansi, which is the spider. And basically it's like, don't be like this guy. Like he's the worst person on the planet. You know, he's a trickster. So you have a comedian who comes on stage and is saying all kinds of funny things about his family, and like, you know, he puts himself at the bottom of the bottom to kind of teach you a lesson. Don't be like me. Or even if you want to be like, learn something from my mistakes, but in a funny way.
Yeah, there's a humility there that makes us trust the comic, right? So like to transition, so what are the important cultural functions that comedy plays in society? So I have a couple. So I think it's a social lubricant, right? And this isn't necessarily professional comedians, just interactions that we have through comedy, right? So it diffuses tension or nerves, right? In certain social situations. Comedy helps establish trust, since humor is an attractive quality, right? And by extension, it shows creativity, relatability. It shows that you can adapt. And Kojo, you mentioned courage, right? It takes courage to try a joke. And it's also a measure of intelligence, I would argue. Not all jokes. Sometimes it's a fart joke and haha, right? But now, disclaimer, this only works if the person is actually funny, right? So for the comedian example specifically, it has to actually be a good comedian, right? Like we've all been in a room with a guy trying to be funny and it's just cringy, joke, like shut up, man. Yeah, just stop talking. You're not funny, right? So I don't know. It's something innate. You can't teach comedy. So that's why it's precious when we see it, right? And it actually works. In my opinion. So.
Yeah, timeliness is always, timing is the biggest thing when it comes to it, right? Like it'd be funny, like if, because you said like diffuse situations, social lubricant, like kind of make tense situations a little bit more jovial. Like rather than kind of electing like, you know, career politicians, celebrities, we should just elect comedians as our world leaders. Like, can you imagine like the, you know, global economic forum or, you know, some kind of like negotiations between like Russia and the United States? It's just two comedians.
Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle for president.
Yeah, it'd be like Dave Chappelle. It's just like,
is this Putin guy for real?
What are you gonna do? Nuke me?
Just lights up a joint.
Like,
but it would like it would just, you know, everyone likes to hang out with a comedian. But if it's just comedians hanging out with comedians, I mean, yeah, they get shit done.
Yeah. I mean, there's some presidents who tried to use comedy.
Yeah,
Barack Obama was hilarious.
That's true. Yeah, he did have. Yeah, he did have good timing. Yeah,
he did the.
But in a way, like Trump did it the opposite way. Like he used it.
Yeah, and then you're kind of just laughing at like, did you really just say that?
You're not laughing with him.
Yeah. But then it was that because there's I was watching this one thing where it's like the moment Trump decided to run for president was like that press the press night where Obama was laying into Trump as like part of his bit.
Yeah, what's that called when the president holds?
Yeah,
Is it the
it's
roast?
Not a
like
roast.
press White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Correspondence dinner.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
the president would it's usually kind of a moment for like the press to kind of get a few in good spirit jabs at politicians and particularly the president and members of the White House. Yeah, but it's always meant in good spirit and
Yeah, but I think like this is where you the one who's receiving the roast has to be a bit of like,
yeah,
chill, relax, and like take it in. No, don't be a bit too beating yourself
Tell
up.
that to Donald.
yeah.
Donald did not enjoy Mr. Obama's jokes. He ran for president allegedly just to get back at him.
In a way, it's kind of like a lesson for life too, like being able to laugh at yourself.
Yep. Doesn't work with narcissists though. Clinically,
A narcissist comedian.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of comedians are narcissists too, but like from what I understand, comedians have some like they're damaged people, so they're tapping into like maybe they didn't get enough attention as kids. So humor is a natural talent. They nurtured it over years. This is their way of being like, hey, I have value, So like, what motivates someone to pursue this career path?
Yeah, Joan Rivers was like the best at roasting people.
Oh yeah.
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 She like especially the one where it was her roast. Oh man. If you ever get the chance to watch it, Comedy Central roast of Joan Rivers. So good.
Yeah.
You have like Norm Macdonald was there, a lot of greats, and then she comes in at the end and she just owns everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's definitely one of the GOATs for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had the chance to work on a perfume bottle, and
oh yeah,
which was for her.
Oh, for Joan Rivers.
Yeah,
that's dope.
Oh wow,
it was fun.
Did you meet her?
Experience. Yeah. No, I didn't get to meet her, but I went to the office.
Like, was it like a perfume that was like a Joan Rivers?
Yeah, it was a Joan Rivers perfume that we
wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So we designed the bottle, and then we worked with like a person who would like make the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
But she has no idea. Like everything is just designed, and then we just present it to her.
Right.
Did it get produced?
How long ago was this?
Say it again.
Go ahead, Alex.
Did it get produced?
I don't know. I have to follow up and see. I'll ask my.
How long ago was this?
Oh, this was a long time ago.
She passed away, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
One of the GOATs. Especially for women comics. She just did not give a what. Yeah. She's, I think, Alex, you mentioned earlier that comedy taps into like an unspoken truth or a taboo. I think she was very much ahead of her time. Yeah. She just went right for the jugular.
Yeah.
Right. But it's,
I think as a comic, you have to like be observant and be able to like take like basic things and show it to light and be like, hey, this is weird.
Yeah.
Or like like
for sure.
Why does this exist? Like why do like stuff like that? Things that people don't really pay attention to.
They say the quickest way to poke holes at reality is through humor.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So it's the whole you can't handle the truth, but with a little wit and lighthearted observation, maybe.
And some of the best comics are ones that they like Russell Peters, right? He's Indian background, and here in the GTA, there's Brampton is like a huge Indian population, and that's where he's from. And he's like a god there, like, and he's just every time he comes back, they just love him and they adore him because he just pokes fun at their whole culture, and and it also is a good way to kind of learn about other cultures and the customs that make them that. So rather than learning about it more in a more formal educational way, it's also good to kind of learn about them from another respect.
Yeah, because
which you notice that for like example him. he had
Yeah.
friends,
Yep.
Jamaican friends, Chinese friends.
Yeah.
So he's a reflection of like the Canadian
Exactly.
community, Toronto specifically.
Yeah.
Right. Like these are the
Yeah.
people he grew up with,
Yeah.
right? So immediate, like if it was now, I don't know if people would be offended by his jokes, but back then it was so like, yes, we are multicultural and we do make fun of each other and it's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's a quote by
Yeah.
Rowan Atkinson. He was famously Mr. Bean. If you don't know who the actual actor is, Rowan Atkinson.
Oh yeah.
So he said, "quote Every joke has a victim," and the point of comedy is to offend. It's meant to hold up a mirror to you, your culture, beliefs, and society, and kind of point out how wrong and stupid things are. Because like if comedians aren't going to do it, then who will, right? And the only way that you can
Right.
grow and kind of understand how you're pissing other people off, or what you're doing wrong, or just the oddities that just make you or your society you. It's important, and that's pretty much there's many cases over the past couple of years where it's like is going back to that cancel culture thing in the upfront was like where comedians would not be allowed to go to certain universities or certain areas because it's like, oh, there were going to be friction. It was like, well, first of all, you don't have to go to the comedy show, right? So you have a choice. You don't have to attend.
Yeah.
You have freedom.
You do have the freedom to choose, yes. It's not
Yeah.
compulsory. And then number two is that the whole point is to offend, right? Like there's obviously a line, like if you go up and just start like spewing racial slurs, like, okay, bit of a line.
But then it's not in good faith.
That's not in good
If you
faith,
tell
yeah.
Exactly. You have to tell the jokes in good faith.
Yeah.
Bill Burr said, everyone laughs their head off until it's their group that's getting made fun of. So then now
Yeah.
you're offended.
Yeah.
You were laughing your head off at the disabled folks a second ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now that you're
Yeah.
you know,
It's like, oh yeah, it's
Now
okay
that you're
to make
attacking
fun of
whatever.
everybody else, but like, oh no, don't do my group.
oh, not fat people.
Yeah. It's like-
Yeah. I remember growing up, there was this Ghanaian comedian. His name is Waterproof.
Okay.
And he came in with remember those British hats that they used to wear when they were colonizing Africa?
Like the,
Like it's like a hat. It's not like a top hat, but it's the one that Trump's wife wore some time ago. Have you remember the one?
I'm googling it
referring
right
to?
now. Yeah.
It looks like a British police hat.
Typing in British colonial hat.
Yeah.
Colonial style.
It has a certain kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he would wear something like that, and then he would have as a bow tie. It was the pestle for grinding, and he would wear it as a bow tie.
Wow.
And this guy, when he's like, his stories are basically like he makes fun of everybody. No one is left out. Like he makes fun of even like ghosts, like the ghost. It's like, and then when he's talking to me like, please don't beat me in the backstage. We're just playing. We're all friends here.
These are just jokes.
Oh jeez.
One of the best comedians.
Who's your favorite comedian? Who's your favorite comedian all time and right
Me?
now? Because like sometimes you kind of get on a certain train.
It's a good question. Can't pick one. Which of your children do you love the best? No. Like when I was a kid, I listened to Chris Rock a lot.
Okay.
And then like Dave Chappelle. As I got older, Louis C.K., Bill Burr. I like Joe Rogan just because I related to his podcast. I love his podcast. His comedy, not as much as his podcast, but I smoked a lot of weed in my early university days, so I like that kind of humor. And he talks about aliens and weird stuff, and that appealed to me for a while. But I would say probably Chappelle or Bill Burr as my top right now, if I had to narrow it down.
Yeah, I think Eddie Murphy is like one of my
Yep.
favorites.
And then, of course, I know Alex is going to say this, one of the great philosophers, the guy named Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Jerry's on my list too.
You gotta.
I think Jerry is like
He's one of the goats.
unlike all the other comedians. His is like, and again, I find it like not all my friends like Jerry because it's kind of like the Office, like the British Office.
It's observational comedy.
Comedy. It's different. Like if you're not trying to learn the culture, you wouldn't understand. So there are people who are like, I don't like the American Office and I don't like the British Office. And then some people say that like Seinfeld is not funny, but I'm like, whoa, this guy is like one of the best. Like,
it's all,
how can you come up with like stories that are like so simple?
It's not for everybody. It's not for
funny.
everybody. Like I think it's observational humor, right? But Chris Rock talks about what made Seinfeld so great. Like he introduced, or like not introduced, but he perfected the idea of setting up a joke with a premise. So he had like a thesis to every joke, even the most basic thing, like how do people shower, you know? So like the idea of communicating with the audience, like he would hypnotize the audience with the most simple thing by providing context and then punchline, essentially, or whatever the formula is. Yeah. But he's arguably one of the greatest observational comics in human history.
Yeah. What do they call it? Ovaltine. Yeah.
So do you think
my favorites are? I mean, Bill Burr's like the guy's awesome. But other ones that I've been interested in are Mark Forward. He's a Canadian. Just a lot of very interesting kind of stand-up comedy. Like one he had to like, he's a single father and he has to like, you know, prepare his kids lunch. So he's like sitting there making sandwiches for the week as he's delivering his whole bit. He's just putting like fucking mayo on bread as he's getting his whole bit. It's such a great one. And then one I've been watching a lot lately is Joe Coy.
Joe Coy's funny.
Yeah. He's
special.
Yeah, so good. Many specials on Netflix, so definitely you can dive into that one. And then another one is Taylor Tomlinson. I think she was like, there's her most recent special on Netflix, where she kind of talks a lot about like going to like therapy and stuff like that, where she was able to actually like kind of deliver a story where you actually got like an emotional attachment to her whole story and her whole bit. But it was quite a ride, and it's like you have that good mix of like empathy for her and what she's going through with the comedy that goes along with it, and just that delivery was, I haven't seen a comedy or comedian do that ever, really. I think it was an amazing special to watch.
Yeah, there's an art to it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
all these guys and girls that we named, right? Alex, you were talking about how philosophy, like it's a reflection of its time, right?
Yeah.
So is there modern day philosophy that taps into like classic philosophical principles? Like I have an answer to that, but I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Modern philosophy that taps into classic principles?
Like academic philosophy. So like something that Plato said or Aristotle. Do comedians, you know, relate to that in with regards to the modern day world? You know what I'm trying to ask here?
I think only in the way where they would like riff off of it. I don't know if they.
Yeah,
that's a good answer. Like Louis C.K. Sorry, go ahead, Kojo.
No, I'm just trying to like think here, but I'm trying to think because there's some stuff that like the existence of the table, like I don't know if it's Socrates or Plato, and then they're like the chair is an idea, so the ideal chair doesn't exist. It could be different other things.
It's kind of deep, yeah.
I'm trying to think of a comedian that would probably fall.
I have an example from Louis C.K. who taps into like quote unquote classical philosophy. So like why? He has this bit where his little girl keeps asking him why. And so she like eventually he gets really abstract with his answers. So the little kid asks why, and he goes, so I'm just looking at my joke here. So the little kid keeps asking him why, And he goes, well, because some things are and some things are not. And then she's like, but why? Well, because things that are not can't be. Why? He's like, well, because then nothing wouldn't be. You can't have fucking nothing isn't. So he just breaks down and she breaks him. But like that's an example of, ancient philosophical principles of like what is life.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminded me of Ricky Gervais when I think it was the Golden Globes when he was the host.
A host.
And he told everyone in the crowd just basically like, you have no right except talking about like politics. Don't use this as a platform to, go on some kind of political speech or rant. He's like, you're not qualified to talk about any of that. Just accept your award, thank your agent and your God, and get the fuck off the stage. And then they cut to Tom Hanks's face and he's like, his jaws to the floor.
All the celebrities were so offended. But it was great.
That goes back to the point. Like, you're supposed to be offended, but like, okay, maybe like his delivery was brash, but guy has a point,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
So transitioning there, we live in the era of cancel culture, allegedly so-called
Right.
cancel culture. Do you think? A lot of comedians have complained that it's starting to get ridiculous. What do you guys think about that? Do you think comedy can survive cancel culture?
I think it's an art piece, and it's an art, and especially unless maybe AI takes over.
AI stand-up
If
comedy.
it's still gonna be humans.
Yeah. Well, some
Why
would
did
argue
the
that
dog
cancel-
cross the road?
Yeah, what's the punchline for that one?
It's a great
Some would
quote
argue that
today.
cancel culture has always canceled the philosopher, right? This is just the modern day version of canceling
Yeah.
the philosopher.
Socrates got canceled, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's always been cancel culture. It just hasn't been called that. Nobody likes the brash,
Yeah.
outspoken person. The comedian, what they did is they added humor and a performance. But like if you look at Lenny Bruce, like these pioneers, like there were laws that he couldn't tell certain jokes, and he went to prison and blah blah blah. It was a whole thing. But now comedy is like, no, it's a performance. You can't arrest me. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's also free speech too, right? Like all of
Exactly.
the rights that
Yeah.
ironically cancel culture holds near and dear to their heart, and everybody, like your right to freedom of religion, right to express how you want to be, like right to be yourself, everything like that, like that all stems from free speech. Free speech is the one right that gives you all that. And so to police other people's speech, you're also simultaneously policing your own speech. So if you do value having the right to say things that you believe in, you also have to value the right of other people to say things that they believe in. And the whole point of a democracy, debate, and having free speech in a society is so that people can converse with each other and debate with each other to arrive at a conclusion. And sometimes you do need to be told that what you're doing is wrong and what you're doing is, not correct, or, could be potentially offensive, or even just what you're doing is just idiotic and stupid. Like when I was growing up, like my generation, we would wear like, baggy pants and like, you could see everybody's underwear walking down the street, and you look back on that now and you're like, wow, we were dressing like idiots. But at
Good
the time,
time.
it's like, oh, no, this is cool. This is what all the cool kids. And the comedians at the time were like laying into us and making fun of us. And, here we are a couple decades, not that far, but decade or so later. And it's like, maybe they had a point. So sometimes you kind of get wrapped up in the zeitgeist of the time. And it's sometimes it's important to kind of realize that a lot of how you view the world around you is influenced by being a part of it, right? It's like that. It's like the frog and water analogy, right? If you have a frog in a pot of water and you gradually turn up the heat, the frog has no idea that the water in the pot's getting hotter.
Yeah.
But if you throw the frog into a hot pot of water, it'll jump out immediately. So you don't know the culture's changing around you, and we do need people in our society who are curious enough and will ask questions and will poke holes in the aspects of our society that we need to. And comedians and philosophers do that.
Yeah, and that's why I like the analogy that I used in the beginning of the episode, where they're like the trickster who you don't want to be like them, Because if you listen to like Raw, Eddie Murphy's Raw, that was like some heavy stuff. Like that was like one of those, like skits that wouldn't like survive now. Like you can't play it on in a way, like even like Chappelle's style is a bit more of like, there are times where you have to like actually try and understand what he's trying to say. If not, you think he's actually making fun of people. But really what he's trying to do is like, he's actually bringing something. He's trying to get us to understand something about the situation and where he's coming from. And I think that's the reason why he even like decided not to go ahead a while ago when he went out for like 12 years. Because like he was trying to educate, but then people were laughing at him instead of with him, which is two different things. Like you don't want to be laughed at, you want to be laughed with. Like it's like, we're making fun of ourselves, but can we do something about it? And then people are just laughing and not solving anything. And then he's like, you know what? I'm out.
Yeah, and he didn't agree with MTV's vision at the time, like, or they didn't agree with his vision. Like, he wasn't making the type of comedy that he wanted to make, and he just burnt out. And he's like, screw it, I'm going to Africa for or whatever. Yeah. But he came back with a vengeance, right? I forget what contract he signed, but it was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, that trilogy those are good, 3 good specials.
Yep. And then he got tangled in cancel culture recently with his last special, talked about trans people, and there was a whole thing. But the whole, like we were saying, Kojo, he's trying to tell the story, the context. Like, he was friends with a trans woman who killed herself.
Right.
But nobody listened to that part. They just... Right? No. It was just, he hates trans people. He hates whatever.
Yeah, but if you listen to the story, she killed herself because of her own community coming down on her.
Ironic.
Yeah. And that's the point he was trying to make. It's like, you're all acting. I mean, we'll probably get canceled for this, maybe.
Yep. No one's listening to us anymore.
Yeah. And I remember he said something about this rapper. I forgot his name. The baby shot someone at the grocery store.
Yeah. Oh gosh! He's like, the baby.
Right, and he didn't go to jail.
Yep.
But then when he said somebody said something, it was like one of those things where you can actually kill someone and go away, like nothing will happen to you, but you say something about someone and you can actually be punished for that.
Yeah.
I think in what our topic, they're so like how they think is so rich that if you're not understanding what they're saying, it will just pass by you. It's like reading Plato. Like I would read Plato, I'm like, what the hell is this?
There's so much nuance. Like, it's not black and white. Like, it's so not black, and that's what today's world. It's just black or white. Pick a side. Like
you're either on
X or Y, A or B. But that's not how life is. Things are complicated. Yeah, right? You can't go tribal.
It's all shades of gray.
Exactly. But Kojo, you were saying Eddie Murphy. I was going to say he and Dave Chappelle as well. They take their inspiration from Richard Pryor, who back then, everything comes full circle. Back then, audiences were like shocked by the things that Richard Pryor was saying. Using the N-word, just talking about stories of his childhood with like strippers, and because I think his mom worked in a hostel, not a hostel, like an escort service, something like that. He had a rough childhood, right? But also back then, people were loving that he was telling stories about this world, especially folks who like they didn't have that kind of childhood, right? And now it would be awful.
Because even before Richard Pryor was also copying what Cosby was doing. Because everyone was like, yo, how can this guy be on stage like a black man?
Just talking freely. But Cosby just wanted to make it no matter what. And he had very clean comedy. Yeah. Talk like a elite, white collar guy. So, and I mean,
which also made sense.
It worked for him.
Because at that time, his crowd that he was trying to target is also like, I mean, as a black person, like this guy was like, the reason why black people dress really well is because your looks is the reason why someone is going to give you a chance to even speak. Right. So if you come on stage and you're nicely dressed, we will pay attention to you. If you're like not nicely dressed, we will no one will pay attention.
Especially in those times.
So Cosby going on stage in like the suits and stuff was pay attention to.
Yeah. He presented himself in that manner.
Yeah.
Especially in, what is it, the 60s, I guess?
Right. And then Richard is like, nah,
Yeah.
through all of that. Let's be real.
70s and 80s.
Yeah, there's definitely
Switch
phases
it
when
up.
it comes to comedy, but it depends on what the zeitgeist is like for the time, right? So like our zeitgeist,
Yeah.
like, where it's we have this cancel culture where there's a lot of narrative around like what you can and can't say. But if you look at like I've recently been started reading the 1984, where because we're paying attention to what's going on. I'm like, I want to see what George Orwell has to say.
Yeah.
But the reason why that book, like I just mentioned 1984 and everyone knows what that book is about. I don't have to mention Big Brother for you to know what I'm talking about, and the fact that the book is about policing of free speech. And the reason why it stood the test of time, like it came out in the early 80s or late 70s, is because it's very true to society. It's very true to the very values that we have. And that art it's not necessarily comedy, but it does the same thing that comedy does, which is it holds a mirror up to society. And that's what art has always done. Even in the case of like what even like Da Vinci, Michelangelo did, Donatello, Raphael, like they held mirrors up to society going all the way back to the Renaissance. You have the Impressionist artists like Cubists, like they're all holding mirrors up to society. The Dadists, which put their name, they signed the name on a urinal and put it into a museum, and that urinal is the most expensive urinal in the whole world because it holds a mirror up to the trivial things that we value in society. And comedy is just essentially just does that in a different lens, right? And the whole point is to understand what that mirror is reflecting back. It's not like if you are offended, then that's probably by design. If you're entertained, that's by design. It's art, and that's what it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to always be like a popcorn flick where you watch Marvel comics and, oh, we're going to save the world again. Oh, fantastic. Sometimes it's supposed to hurt, that's art is not always going to be beautiful.
The more this cancel culture keeps going, the more things will get boring because you can't say anything. Like they asked Steve Carell if they would do The Office again, and he said they wouldn't be able to say the same jokes now.
No.
And when was The Office finished? Like
early 2010s, yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling me you can't do The Office now? Like we grew up with like comedy movies. Well, I'm trying to think of some examples, like The Hangover or Superbad, like those types of shit. Right, like that humor wouldn't fly now.
No. Like, oh, kids drinking. Oh my gosh.
But
fat
like,
jokes.
Really?
But South Park and like Family Guy are doing okay though.
I saw this one bit
Family
by Taylor Tomlinson, the comedian I mentioned previously, where her bit was like she took her cousin to go see the Book of Mormon, which is written by the creators of the South Park, and her cousin's from like Gen Z, and the whole time she felt like she's like she didn't even think about it because it's funny, it's South Park, right? Yeah. Goes there, and the whole time her cousin's like appalled, and she's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, what did I do?
Oh man.
I think as an artist, that's one thing you're trying to do. You're trying to get people to like your painting, your music, your artwork, or hate and criticize. So I think there's always going to be a room of
haters,
people still making material, but like, and then expecting your reaction, because that's what you want as an artist, someone's reaction, either good or bad.
To make people think about the art as well, if possible, especially with comedy.
Yeah.
But, again, not all comedy is, deep necessarily. Like there are comedians who talk about like, the food they ate. Like
getting stuck at the airport. Yeah. It's
right.
like, okay, life stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes you think about it, like the places where we go to listen to comedy is, in a small room or whatever, but then you're there with your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, and usually first dates and stuff. I would recommend
no, do it.
If
you want to know that person, you got to know what they laugh at.
Get to it right away. You want a real relationship or what?
But I mean, can you imagine like you're trying to talk about certain topics, but you can't bring it up, and then there's a comic who makes it easier for you to talk about that topic.
Yep.
So then now you go home, and then things can lead to other things.
Yeah,
You go
that's
down
true.
the
Yeah,
rabbit
I
hole.
hear you. What did you think about this joke?
yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, I agree.
You know, like even with you and your girlfriend, there are moments where you're like, "Oh, our joke, our this." So then it's like an inside joke. She says something, and
oh
then
yeah,
you both
inside
laugh.
jokes are the best.
Yep.
Yeah, I love
You know,
inside
like-
jokes.
You build a rapport.
Yeah, or as
Yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
question: have you had a moment where you wanted to laugh? Like it's like you've been holding on to a laugh, and it's inappropriate to be laughing. Like say on a bus or
Oh,
like
yeah.
at
So
a conference.
sorry,
And-
I cut you off. Go ahead. So I was.
Okay, no, go.
Oh man, it's like I'm not gonna say where I was at or whose thing I was at. So I was at a funeral,
Oh no.
and I'm not gonna say whose funeral it was. And I had the Bare Naked Ladies song stuck in my head, but specifically this one lyric. Where does it go? So it's 1 week by the Bare Naked Ladies. The
Yes.
lyric goes, "I'm the kind of guy that laughs at a funeral. If you can't understand what I mean, you soon will." And that just lyric just kept looping around my head as they're like going through like all the prayers and like how the eulogies for this person. They were a great person, by the way. But the whole time I just have Bare Naked Ladies stuck. I'm the kind of guy that laughs in a funeral. Can't understand what I mean. But just the whole fucking time. And, like I just can't. Like the whole. Like why did my head go there? I don't know. But it actually, the funny
virus.
thing is that it actually makes sense. If you're at a funeral and you think that lyric, it actually makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, shall we do final thoughts?
Yeah, no, we can do final
Any more
thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, should we even take comedians seriously?
You shouldn't take the joke seriously, but you should take the message seriously.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know how to answer that one. I think no. Ultimately, no. But I think take the insight or the attempt at finding insight through joke. Take that seriously, but don't take it with
Right.
this is the Bible now.
Yeah.
Like it's just a joke. It's a person trying to come up
Yeah.
with a life insight. That's it.
Yeah.
But my final thought is, I think comedians are modern day philosophers. No disrespect to actual philosophers. All the philosophy majors who work at my local Starbucks, don't worry, still like you, still tip you. But I think they're necessary, and I think like listening to them is necessary, and kind of just embracing that full view of who you are, just head on, take it on the chin, it makes you a better person in the end, because you realize the error of your ways. And if you watch enough stand-up comedy, like you'll turn eventually, it'll all come around, and it's funnier when it's about you, and it's just more enjoyable, and life is richer for it. And I always crave more. Yeah.
Well said. For me, I think the attempt at the joke is what counts, because I mentioned earlier you can't describe humor. It's very innate to the individual. And so when we express ourselves naturally with humor, it might reveal a hidden philosopher in all of us.
For me, I think it's there are moments where like it's difficult for you to understand where someone is coming from. So usually when you have comedians, they shed light on things that you don't really pay attention to, which allows you to get outside yourself and learn something that you probably wouldn't have known. So, like usually just take it easy and, laugh about it, like, relax, enjoy it. And you might learn a thing or two from,
Yeah, it's true. Everyone's always a friend.
And again, you bought the ticket, right? You bought the
get
ticket
your
to
money's
go
worth.
see it. So no one is forcing you to.
And everyone's always friends or wants to be friends with the person who's easygoing.
It's true.
It's easy to make friends if you're easygoing.
Yeah.
Or at least funny if they're a hard ass.
Yeah. And humor's a great way, like if you're just to kind of make a stressful day easier, make a stressful situation easier,
Right. Because you think about it, it's like like swallowing like a really hard pill, like something that is difficult to
goes down easier with some
they
water.
wrap it with humor, which apparently there's actually a psychological study on it where when you're laughing you put your guard down and you relax, so you're more willing to listen.
But like releases a chemical too, like it's like a positive feel good chemical, has like healing properties apparently. Yeah, laughter is a good thing for that. Yeah It's also good like if you're giving like a very like a presentation to like a client or you know something that could really impact your career, just open up with a really awkward racist joke. You know, works every time. It definitely will get the crowd engaged and will make you remembered. Or actually, don't do that.
Words of wisdom.
Can you imagine?
Right, on that note, follow us on all the social medias, Raised Eyebrow Podcast. And remember, kids, life is a tragedy to those who feel and a comedy to those who think.
There you go.
Out.
They gotta perfect your gun noises.